What's your name?
Caleb.
Caleb. Thanks, Caleb.
All right, so let's call the meeting to order. We are at the Fort Bend County Levy Improvement District Number 7 Board of Directors meeting of September 2nd, 2021. Item number 1 on the agenda is to call the meeting officially to order, and we'll do that. Item 2 is public comments. I don't see anybody from the general public here, so we don't have any public comments to consider tonight. Item number 3 on the agenda is your general administrative and financial management agenda items, starting with agenda item A. We distributed draft minutes to the board in advance of the
The only thing I meant to, us having the ability to kind of look at those, and now I know they did come via email, but for those who's gotten used to look to the site,
Okay.
it'd be appreciated if we
Yep,
could
we'll
get
work to
back
get
to
those out sooner.
I just didn't put them on the email, so I didn't realize they weren't posted.
Anybody have any revisions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve both sets as written.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Item 3B is your tax assessor collector report. Brittany?
Okay, good evening, everyone. The report I have for you today is for the month of August. Your beginning balance is at the top of page 1, $21,802.62.
Wait, Michael, can you bring the, I'm sorry, we're slow, and I've read through it, but, and if you can't get it up, we can march along also.
Hard copies, no sir.
Yeah, why don't you pass that up?
Yeah.
So after your collections and your disbursements from last month, your ending balance for August was $45,185.48. Page 2 shows tax and levy information. Page 3 shows your collections. For the 2020 tax year, you're at 99.3% collected. You're dead even where we were this time last year for the 19 tax year. On page 4, I have 2 letters and 3 checks for your approval, totaling $26,674.83, leaving you with a cash balance of $18,510.65. After that's going to be your delinquent tax accounts. And then there's also an upgrade. And that's it, unless you guys have questions for me.
All right, any questions for Brittany? If not, the motion would be to approve the tax. Is there a second? Okay. Status of the collection items or the delinquent. Well, the Peter Justin account on page 2.
Is that in our handout?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. That was, what I handed out was the minutes, and the agenda. and the
Oh,
minutes.
they don't have a copy of this, hard
It was,
copy?
it was posted, but it was
Why
not.
don't you just read through it?
It is on the back of the tax report, if you still have that.
Oh, is it?
Perfect, thank you. So, on this account, he has an over 65 homestead exemption, but doesn't have a deferral from payment. So they're saying they do not, he owns the property with no mortgage. So of course, if he fills out that deferral application, he's got to do the proper paperwork if he's not going to pay.
So I believe we had discussed this previously, and it was.
The deferral.
Yeah, because we've talked about Justin because
Okay, if you,
Try again, or maybe go hand deliver it or something.
Knock on his door.
I don't know, if we tried it a couple times, we were gonna get the same result. Why don't we just not worry about it? I mean, we have the option of 3 options. We can either file suit and he'll fill it out. We can give it to him again and not have him fill it out, or we can just move on.
I mean, dollar-wise, it's still not high enough that I would, because
I hear you.
when we go to him, it'd be a deferral.
yeah, exactly, he's just going to fill that out.
Yes.
Let's just not waste anybody.
Don't open your mail things.
Yeah, they should go on.
Yeah.
Okay. Myrtle Cruz over to Texas Utility, but
Yes, we, Matt Shucks, worked with the board, especially Director Pincombe and Director Picasso, if there, or any of the other directors, who have an interest in seeing something different, or they would like clarification on certain areas, we have the opportunity to kind of recreate or redesign the monthly reports. We've done our best to present the information. I don't want to double up on, because I know Christina Perry had presenting their version or their monthly bookkeeping report, but we've used the same format as of starting, and we will continue to refine and read as to what they would see on those notes.
Brandon, I have to tell you, I'm a little concerned when we got into this, Lisa Richter was somebody that we knew, had done this sort of stuff before, so she's
Still a stakeholder for the management of the company, which is regrettable, but we still think very highly of her. We have a lot of expertise still on our team. We have recently teamed up with Fbclid, Inc., and they have a great deal of expertise in the mud industry in Texas Special Districts. So we are very confident in our abilities to continue to provide the services and to provide a high-quality product each and every time. We continue to look at and for high-quality personnel to join our team, to continue to refine and develop our product for not only Fort Fbclid 7, but all the districts that we service.
So when we started out, Lisa was kind of leading, she was looking to hire some people. How many people are from, so you're planning to use a different set of software for what we have than what Fbclid Inc. uses? We talked about this before.
Municipal accounts uses, and Fbclid uses a different product. They use a Sage 50 product. But accounting is we're really gaining with our alliance with Fbclid. Someone who's coming on board who has been in the industry for nearly 8 years, and we expect him to really provide a lot of the day-to-day quality checks that he's used to seeing.
How many people besides yourself are familiar with the QuickBooks that, our configuration, our setup? Is it just you?
Well, we have
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, Michael.
Texas Utility Bookkeeping has 4 employees right now, but we also have are supported by our CPA group, which has 12 employees altogether, including the 4 partners. And then with our alignment with Fbclid, that brings on an additional 4 employees.
So, but specifically with QuickBooks, you're saying that we're using the QuickBooks Inc. Software application.
So
who else besides yourself?
So everybody at the CPA firm is QuickBooks oriented. We use Enterprise with all of our other CPA clients, and both Enterprise and the other various products that are offered by the company. So
Everything.
right at the end, I know Christina was trying to make sure she got all the last of the invoices in, so we could have a nice clean break and get those paid out. And so that's the last thing. We reconcile the accounts. We're just waiting for the last bank statements to come in so that we can have a cleaner break. But yes, we are ready to go forward. We have all the information that we need, and we're ready to go.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Yeah.
You said, you used the words teaming up with Fbclid and Alliance. Did you acquire them? Is this a joint venture? What is your business relationship with them?
Yes, we've acquired Fbclid.
Okay, so they're 100% owned.
100% owned.
Now those, can I jump in here real quick, Jeff?
Yeah.
So those contracts between your entity, which is Fbclid, you bought the entity.
Yes, we bought the entity.
So those contracts won't be transferred over to Texas Utility Bookkeeping, a different entity.
No, they will stay with FMI.
Matuska entity, or will they go into the Texas Utility Bookkeeping?
Into Texas Utility Bookkeeping.
Is there a reason why you're not at this time merging those entities?
More of a tax consequence,
Okay, fair enough.
more than anything else. Yes, so we have the bond accounts. I hope everybody is ready to sign a whole bunch of extra papers to this go-around meeting. So yes, we have presented those, and the red tabs, everybody needs a signature on. The blue ones, Mr. Jim has a signature, and then the yellow for the secretary.
So those accounts are not, to be clear, that as of right now, those accounts are not open. You need the signature cards to open.
We need the signature
Okay.
cards, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Jeff, thanks for letting me jump in there.
That's my questions.
All right, anybody have any other questions? All right, Brendan, thanks. Okay, item E on the agenda, 3E, is your bookkeeper's report.
All right.
Christina.
Everyone has a copy of my report in front of them. Mine was actually printed up on the screen. We'll go over this cover page here unless you need me to go into greater detail throughout the report. Looking down at your notes, page 3, you have your bond fund. You have an income and tax transfer. We did pay your 9/1 bond payment. And we did 2018 construction account. There were 7 checks for your review and approval. On page 10 is your operating capital. There were followed by 15. As Brendan mentioned, everything in our office has been completed for transition. We are, after this meeting, I will go back to the office tomorrow, clear everything out. We will finalize sending the books to audit. Once those books go to audit, Myrtle Cruise will be done at that point. Unless the auditor has any questions that I can answer, Myrtle Cruise can answer, that would be the only time that we would be coming into play. Again, if Brandon has any questions throughout that transition or even after, he has my cell phone number. He can always give me a call as well. Lastly, your TDM invoices. If you recall, AECOM's 100% Design, Phil and his group have sent out their pay estimates. Just because that account's going to be closed, we knew that. So as of yesterday, I did not see any deposits coming in, but we should have a total of $171,764.58 coming in soon from TDM. The money is coming in. Do you have any questions for me?
I have a question on the front page, where you have this transfer out of operating capital, you referred to it of $1,062,000, and you said you transfer that into the bonds.
That's correct. So remember, originally we had set aside $1.7 million, I believe. And so at last meeting, it was authorized for us to only transfer $962,000. So I just put that footnote on page 11, showing that we could still potentially have an additional $769,000 being transferred out of that 1.7 that we had originally thought we were going to have to transfer to debt.
So when I'm looking at these,
That's going to be your biggest transaction there. Then we are paying your 2018 and 2020 paying agent fees. Each of those fees are $750. Your Bank of 62 going with negative $962,000 transferring to bond fund. And on page 3, you'll see the income in your taxable account of $962,000.
okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for Christina? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the bookkeeper's report and authorize payment of the disbursements listed in the report.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Christina, thanks for that report. Kind of touched on it under item F, but Phil, you want to run down what we've gotten by way of?
I was going to the AECOM contract. It's like that are often common expenses, and there's a slight markup on those. Those are not reimbursable. So I put some numbers in here just so y'all can tell that difference. If you scroll down just a hair, yeah, it was a long
And we
one.
budget, we've had you kind of anticipate 120
Exactly, yeah.
for our planning purposes, which is huge.
And I don't know if I put it in this report or not, but we did, TDM, this is for 75% of the flood control money. And we talked, it will probably take 90 to 120 days like we're assuming, but we confirmed that, and that machine and that money's still there. So at least, we're all in phase 1 now with AECOM design, and we still have to technically get phase 2 approval for construction, but at least everything, some of the development plans we're gonna talk about in a minute is still, at least showing up to be true. We'll see when we get the money in the bank, that's the big takeaway on this side.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, it's good news.
It's great news. Bill, anything to talk about on our applications on the?
No.
No information, good, bad, or indifferent? Okay, all right. All right, well, let's move on to item G then and talk about your financial management plan. And here I will either turn it over to Phil or to Trey and Christine. Somebody other than me.
I've been to a few meetings, Bill and others, to try to put together scenarios of the, and so what we tried to do is outline on the left case, scenario one is two that went into these numbers. Scenario two, again, it's a little small, but as you look at it, the pump station remains on schedule, the detention storage gets delayed, and so we need to borrow for project costs, $14.3 million. That's before adding in the other costs related to the bonds, which we tried to lay out here in terms of the soft costs and the capitalized interest. We are assuming in both of the borrowing cases 24 months of capitalized interest, which makes a big difference in the first couple of years.
24 months, that's a lot. Usually 12?
It can vary, and that's obviously an assumption that we could change, but what's gone into these numbers at least is 24.
I'd say, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would say, Jim, in the typical deals that we do at the bank, we do 18 to 24 months capitalized interest.
I mean, we're used to seeing something along those detention and storage as well. In each of these cases, the amount of big differences. A $5 million operating reserve from the FEMA funds. So again, the amount shown here for the reasons is assuming that a $5 million amount is put aside first. The tax rate implications are laid out for the first few years under each scenario. As you can see, if we don't borrow, because the debt service is increasing so much next year, there is a little bit of a projected bump in the tax rate, in the debt service tax rate. As we put the tax rate assumptions together, we assumed that you always needed at least 9 cents on the operating side as the break-even amount to fund operating expenses. And where we could, we held the tax rate overall to 43 cents where it is in 21. And so you do see the biggest bump in scenario one. Scenario two, there is still a bump going into 22, a little bit smaller. The capitalized interest plays a big role in allowing that. And then after 22, the defeasance makes a big difference in terms of being able to bring the debt service down.
This rate carries on flat after 24?
It doesn't, and in the handouts.
So it does or it doesn't?
It does not.
Decreases on the debt side, so it's a benefit to y'all in terms of the operating.
It goes down. And so I'm looking at the page that looks like this, and again, this is the base case, highlighted on the left. And, again, maintaining, what we're always trying to solve to is having 25% of next year's debt service as our ending balance. And so, the rate, it's lower at the beginning, but it stays, it doesn't come down quite as fast. So, there's definitely a difference in the slope if you were to graph that out.
Even though we're keeping tax rates steady, total tax burden on our residents a bit.
Right, that's going to be, every year is different based on our SB2 regulation. So if we're levying 43 cents, that homeowner, depending on their property value, may change. But if it's 43 cents as an overall total tax rate, there's no way for us to predict that.
I understand, but
So,
we're showing here that we can maintain all these scenarios.
Correct,
Except
a
for
total-
2022, we can stay on
potentially,
43%.
and that was our goal.
Right.
Correct.
Behind that is, in the real world, that we borrow more money, so.
To offset that, so they're having opposite effects.
And I think, but then that debt service tax rate is decreasing,
Right.
so be it or not, that we're gonna have that ability to continually manipulate, might not be the right word, but shift in, the reallocation is still gonna be an opportunity for us in terms of
Yeah,
flexibility.
we did not assume an operating fund transfer after.
Correct.
Something, an easier way to think about this, maybe a more financing again, or you're taking that money, originally you're refinancing it, but you're refinancing it at 2% instead of 4%. So in the long run, we're going to end up saving.
It's the defeasance.
The defeasance is what makes
the
it.
difference.
The
Yes.
There's some
absolutely.
numbers buried in there we can
And that's what I was trying to get out of, obviously, getting this at 9:30. If we're gonna roll in and we're gonna finance, and so can we see,
That's gonna cost us money as well.
I understand that,
So
but it's
that's-
having a
you've
clear
gotta take
picture
all
of
of
that.
that.
I'm not saying it's the right way, I'm just saying a clear picture to say, you're gonna save X by doing this, even if it's gonna cost us.
We're talking about the refinancing right now?
Yes.
So, okay, let's,
Well, we're talking about the
no,
We're
default.
talking about the
We're talking
defeasance
about
of
the
capitalized
money itself.
interest.
No,
Yeah,
this
we're
is
just talking about
capitalizing the interest.
capitalizing the interest.
But you gotta capitalize the interest.
Is we've identified the issue that because of cost overruns due to supply chain issues from COVID, we have, we've been talking about that, and this is a way that we can make sure that those payments are made on time. We don't have to be concerned about missing a date. We don't have to increase taxes more than, what are we looking at, a penny at the most if we decide a penny. So and we are, the way we're doing that solves that problem for us.
So scenario 3, if I understand right, we'd be able to defease 14, 15, and 18, and we'd only have 20 and 21 left.
Yeah, and you also have about a little over $4 million left. You don't have anything else to defease right away until early 2029.
Trey, is it all, like we talked about on the call the other day, is it worth pointing out that like, you also got what you're defeasing on here, right? So you're defeasing 26 million,
Right.
but you're deferring 34 million in cost.
If you look at the
No,
detail
no, I
page,
understand.
So it's on there too.
So do, what's in this is we're talking FEMA money, but is there the state money, Senate Bill $7 in this?
Yeah, it's all assumed.
Because that's,
Yeah.
again, what's portrayed here, and I think what Jerry had asked for was a clear delineation, clearly here's dollars and cents, not a summary, that then we got it raises more questions. At our last meeting, we'd asked for a clear delineation of puts and takes, dollars are coming from,
I mean, what?
all right.
It's,
do we have to go to the cash flow report and lay along this to understand that?
if you want to see all the
Except for 22.
7 money, it's the same program, and this is just a tax rate implication of this
And
program.
it's not a question of whether or not we're saving money. I think what Michael's.
Bring your numbers,
So
right?
we've
Like,
got,
No, I think
yeah,
it's,
well, you've got big picture people and
Yeah.
you've got detail-oriented folks. And so for the detail-oriented folks, they're looking for that break.
Yeah, well, in scenario 1, you save roughly 3 million in interest, the next one would be, 6 million in scenario 2,
you're
and then
talking about
scenario
the
3 is.
defeasance.
On the defeasance.
Yeah.
It's impacted by the defeasance, which adds up to negative 13.1 million on the first example, and it costs you 10.5 million to do that. So the difference is what you're coming up with
Yeah.
is
The 3 million.
about 2.5 million. That's there.
What'd you say, Susan?
So this is the debt service that's getting defeased. It adds up to 13 Yeah, it adds up to 13 million.
That's a very simple way to look at it. Thank you.
Well, you had a lot of eyes on this, not only your team, Julie,
Yeah, we took
Christina,
one
but
with
Mike and Phil and Chris.
Getting the lawyers to look at it.
Can you explain a bit why the M&O is not consistent across all 3 scenarios again?
Yeah, and really, we're not trying to solve the M&O. We just tried to keep where we could, we kept the tax rate at 43 cents. Again, it's just an assumption. I
They
can't
just
tell
kept
you
the total at
exactly.
43.
Except for the 1 year where they had to go over.
What do we need as M&O?
9 cents to
Nine.
break even on the
We're at
budget.
9, and if we bring the pump station on, then we need another 2.5.
And that's why 22 goes up. Because
Yeah,
we
so
didn't-
it aligns, it aligns.
Your cost of going up.
Again, I have no problem with the numbers, because the numbers there, it's just that getting all the detail, because we've been down this road before, as I expressed my frustration with, we're getting this, we're going out for a second tranche. I know things changed, but, we didn't have all the numbers, and even for us to have the numbers to kind of make sure we are doing this, and we don't have to go out one more time, because we're gonna spend, I forget what it is, what's the issuance fees, right? Of getting these bonds, another $1 million, or whatever that is, $800,000, $1 million, when the due diligence potentially, I'm not saying was right, but the fact is now we're going out and gonna spend an extra $1 million to acquire this, when we could have spent that $1 million the first time, including in what we got with our first $60 million.
But with all due respect, again, it's very similar to refinancing your house. I mean, just to break it down, you're going to pay closing costs. You will always pay those. And so we just have to take into consideration what we're saving, and is it worth the expense? Are we saving more money by doing the refinance? And again, we're dropping our interest rate in half. And again, I understand that the numbers and getting down to the penny is very, very important to you. It's not that important to me. I can look at these numbers and I feel very comfortable with what our partners have done and the work that they've done. And I sometimes feel like, rather than us being the owners of the restaurant, we're the cooks in the kitchen trying to make the meal ourselves, and that's not really, that's not what we're really supposed to do. We're supposed to double check and make sure that our partners are being forthcoming with the information, and that we have all the information that we need to make the decision. So I do see where, again, there are definitely people, residents who want to see everything down to the penny, but I also think that there's a percentage of the residents who understand, if you can tell me that this is the right way to go, this is the best way to go, then they're okay with that. And then anybody who needs those details, we can get that information to them, but I don't think that we should delay any kind of a decision that we're making because we don't know exactly to the, or at least I'm comfortable making a decision without knowing exactly to the penny how much we're saving, as long as I can see that we are solving the issues of financing these projects, getting the projects online and completed as quickly as we can so that the neighborhood is safe as it can be. And we're being good stewards of the funds that we've been given.
And the other thing we don't see in here is if we delay projects 16 months or 13 months, there's very likely to be escalating costs in those projects.
Again.
But it's really about, this is about, to your point of understanding what's being presented, not to the penny, but that the numbers that are being presented, because one of the things we'd ask is, what are the actual costs, a breakdown of the cost, and here's what we have on cash today, and here's what we're gonna need the shortfall. What we got is, here's your shortfall, but none of the other detail.
I was
In one
comfortable
spot
with the
is what we
information
asked for. We've been getting it in pieces, but that's been the problem, and that's why we're somewhat getting at this a second time.
And again, I'm comfortable with the information that we've received, and when I have questions, I feel like I've gotten good answers at the meetings when I've had those. So it really is just, I think, a different perspective of how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we're charged with protecting the neighborhood and being good stewards of the funds, and I think we're doing that.
Well, I think so. I mean, there's different level of detail. There's no pressing need to approve this tonight, right? I mean, what, is there like some, we gotta do it tonight?
It's not us, that's your engineer and
Well,
project manager and y'all.
so it's a lot of
on projects.
information, and it's really good work. I mean, I really commend you for what you've done. But, I need another couple weeks, right? I need to go through this and just absorb it. And, and I think maybe we can address some of your questions, Mike, in that time. And I think what you're saying is, this all looks good, there's just a level of detail that I want. And what Cindy's saying is, this all looks good, and I have a lot of faith in our folks, and I'm willing to go with it. So, my thought is that pressing that we have to do it tonight?
The only thing that keeps moving out, if you don't, the one decision is bills starting on a bond down. Because every 2 weeks that bumps out is 2 more weeks you can't award that job, if that makes sense. So that's the only, if you're gonna finance, if you're gonna borrow money to finance.
So what we said at our last meeting was directionally, that's what we do, but because it wasn't on the agenda, that to bring it to this one, that it's not a lost cause whether we do it at 15, 23, whatever dollar amount. So I don't think there's any questions about him moving forward with the bond application. It's just about the dollar amount that's borrowed and which ones we do and how we do it.
And the amount you're gonna borrow, we don't have to decide that for months, right?
That's correct.
The bond app will put
Because
in
that's
the
what we
full.
discussed at our last meeting. I didn't see there's any.
So let's as a board, I think we're getting there, but let's just make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're in favor of a bond app, right? I mean, kind of looking at the numbers, and the numbers seem to show
It's
it
obvious we have to have more
straightforward.
money.
Yes, well,
This
it
is
may
what
be
is-
obvious, but everybody needs to agree anyway.
Well, that'll be
I asked
part
the
of
last
Bill's
time.
report,
Yeah.
and an action item on his report.
I mean, this is essentially what I asked for last meeting, was, you know, 3 scenarios that cover everything with a tax rate analysis, which we have. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, I'm pretty
I
happy.
guess in the back of my, by defeasing more, I guess how much we're saving, we're not actually losing money. I mean, what's the total money after all the projects are done, all their bonds are paid? Do the residents pay for scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3? And I think you're telling me that 2 and 3 is less in the long run because of the diffusers, right?
Well, the other thing that you do,
No.
No?
I mean, I'm just focused on the debt service side.
I understand.
Right.
Not the whole.
but, you know, what we do
But if
by,
you're seeing the projects
But that's a
that change in costs, right? No, we're gonna know.
Right.
but one of the other things that we
$12
do
a month.
by spreading the finance out, right, if we're by capitalizing this interest, instead of the neighbors who are living in new territory today paying the full cost, we're spreading the cost of that out over a number of years. So I don't have to pay for it all today. And if whoever sells their house and moves out, then you've got this, the burden is spread over a number of years. So it's just,
Well,
I agree that-
My words too, as to whether I understand this, because it's not just, the 4 years there, but what this does is allows us to keep the rates constant for the 4 years, relatively constant. We get not only the 3 projects funded, but there's an allowance in here for North
the
Levy.
North Levy.
Right, and then by accelerating these projects or doing them sooner, we get more protection now. But what I'm seeing is that we will pay more taxes over time.
Well, I think you're right, because what's not apparent, I think, is that 2 of those bonds that we're paying off come due in 2038 or something like that. And these new bonds are going out to 2049, so there's effectively 10 or 11 years where the residents will be paying taxes on bonds that they would have paid off before. And so I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's a conscious decision we have to make about whether we're saying,
That was my question, Jim. That those extra years of paying, but at lower interest rate, the total amount of money that's spent, paid by residents will be more or less. And I can't figure that out from this.
And those were really my points, is we don't have, not that it's been provided, but to your
Not that
point,
it's
we've
even
got to
a-
digest it.
What-
We're
it's a
being
lot.
asked to
I
make
think
this-
I'm following this, and for purposes of doing that analysis, what do you want the discount rate to be on those future dollars? Because we got to put them in today's dollars terms. Is that at the today's 2.5%? I guess it is. That's the assumption we're making on the interest rate.
With inflation, this is not going to be much money.
But and then
That's right.
and then that's
Sorry.
then
And that's the problem, is that we have no idea what the rates are gonna be in 2040. So we can go through this exercise, and we can make a decision based on today's finances, today's discount rate, what the Fed rate is today, but we have zero idea what's gonna happen in 2030.
Well, that's why you use net present value, right? So,
Well, exactly, but what number do you
The
use?
discount rate is a challenge.
well,
Do you want us to use
philosophically,
today's number,
we're
or
not,
do we want to add 5% every year for inflation? What do we want to do?
I'm not sure what that does for me. I understand the calculations, but we have cost of bond sales, right? So we're going to spend money on these projects. We can talk about the timing of the projects, but we're going to spend, the cost of the projects, and then if you have a bunch of extra money over, we plan to defease bonds with it. And so the hit is that if we're going to sell more bonds, there's a cost to those bonds, and that's probably, I don't know what it is, a couple $1 million, I guess it's in here somewhere, but that is money that our residents have to spend, and we're saying, well, the decrease in the interest rate covers that, and I think it all kind of adds up, but I need to look at it all again
I
in
guess I
some
just get
detail.
I'm pretty happy with this, but it's just, there's a lot of numbers and a lot of things to look at.
Well, I think we all are,
I think I
because
saw
it
this
shows a path forward that
Late yesterday or
works.
this morning.
yeah.
I think it's a good path forward. I'm personally, when I look at scenario 3, where we can do all the projects on time and keep tax rates reasonable, to me, that's
So
very attractive.
when Bill comes up, I think what we're going to say is take scenario 3
Yeah.
and begin the bond app for that, and then as we get better knowledge, we can make a decision. I do have one more question, though, and it has to deal with the certainty of of numbers. In December, we're gonna get a final estimate from AECom for the cost of the Brazos River Erosion Control Project. So we've got 60 million out there, a little bit less, and we'll see what the gap is, but it won't be until the end of March that we get a bid, right? We'll put out the bids mid-March. We should get it accepted by the end of the month, so by our April meeting, we'll have that number. So how dependent are any of these scenarios on getting excess funds from the 2020 bond sale? I'm guessing with scenario 3, there's none because we're just borrowing everything we need.
No, actually, we're all, in 2 and 3, we're assuming that there's 7.3 million contribution from the 20 bonds.
Okay, so we don't know that, and we won't know that till April 1st.
No, I mean, that was, working with Bill, that was the assumption that we got.
That's correct. And this, the backstop of that, Jim, yes, this assumes, you borrowed, let's say just for round number, 60 million, right, last year, and you need 52 to build it. So, right, there's this $7 million extra. We are assuming that gets changed over to the new pump station, right? And so you're right, there's a tight lid on what the Brazos River new pump station can cost. They've got to stay in these numbers, in this range. But when all that's going on in 2020, you've still got 5 to 7 million in operating capital that, especially if you're in scenario 3 where you're borrowing, that's, if we have overages on contract costs, you do still have some cash around for that.
That's not built into this, the use of our operating capital?
It is not. And what it would do is, right, so this assumes, Jim, everything comes in on, in budget. And all these budgets have big contingencies too, right? So, we're for a reason. But if one of them does come in over our giant contingency, you have some cash available. If you sold bonds and they weren't quite enough and everything's 10 times what, it's way more
We've
than
got
we thought.
7.6 million in operating capital
Yeah.
that was set aside from just what we need for operating. That 7.6 million is not allocated in any of these scenarios?
It's at the back end in the defeasance. So what
in the
you
back
would
end of the
lose is a little
defeasance.
defeasance later. In scenario 3, though, Trey couldn't even use it all. So, right, so there's at least that 4 million that is still sitting there next spring.
That's a pretty good cushion there.
And remember.
Yeah, so I mean, it's enough to make us comfortable to
Just let
suggest a change of views.
The debt service is going down, so we don't need all of this .115 for M&O. So you're collecting extra M&O as this debt service comes down. If you keep 43
Yeah, that
cents,
flexibility to do.
you keep
so.
43 cents,
Correct.
you're starting to collect more money.
And because this year we're not gonna have to change rate, all these scenarios too, so, next spring you're gonna have a $2 million operating surplus again. That's why I said 5 to 7, right? You will have 5 available, but when you do that transfer next spring, you'll have 7. And just sitting there unneeded for a project. If you're doing, scenarios 2 and 3. If you're doing scenario 1, obviously, you're just delaying longer, but.
So if things come through and you're saying it does include the Senate Bill 7 numbers, and we have more money, than what we really need, has any of these scenarios do like early calls? What would be have you guys contemplated as far as being able to call it, so we're not waiting until 2040? Because now I got numbers to potentially pay some of this off. I'm not saying that there is, but these numbers have been all over the board, and we know that we have, when you got a $60 million project and you got X number of percent of contingency, you may or may not use that, and we could end up with a huge contingency of 6 million, again, some large.
There's probably a bigger wrinkle in that, Director Pinkham, that, you may have a few million left over at the end, but, just 17.7 million is earmarked for North Levy of operating capital too. That's gonna be the bigger
Wait,
chunk.
how much is?
17.7
17.7
million.
for operating capital for the North Levy?
Yeah, that's how that's factored into here too.
Well, where did we come up with that number?
Ayler.
And can we get those? That's the numbers that I'm interested in seeing.
That's
It's in there. It matches his number.
And we've been carrying that for, since we first did this 6 months ago.
Yeah, I want to see some details around that.
Yeah.
I know that we need to set money aside. I mean, this thing is designed, not to segue too much, but it's sort of designed to have operating, because as the river comes in and it cuts underneath, the longitudinal stone toe protection falls in, and you're putting more riprap on the top. Is that 17.5 for the actual maintenance, or is that because something goes south and we have a major fix?
It's a good point. One thing to point out here is that we said, okay, you've got an X amount to build the river erosion project, then we've talked about before kind of risk and risk mitigation and what can be insured and what can't. We made an assumption, you guys tell if it's good, bad, or indifferent, but we made an assumption that says the minute the contractor turns over the keys to that project, you want to have $5 million or be working towards $5 million in a set-aside account for maintenance of that project. And that's, that, if you look at Trey and Christine's numbers, that's the recommended reserve withheld from FEMA, the $5 million. So we said that project is an assumed construction cost plus $5 million.
What's the 17.5?
So the 17.5 is just a North Levy plug number
Yeah.
that says,
Oh, wait, I thought the 17.5 was operating for the Brazos River.
Operating, no, I'm sorry if I misspoke, yeah, 17.7 operating capital is
All right,
earmarked for.
sorry, okay, I missed that.
And that's been pretty consistent in all of the, scenarios we've been doing.
Yeah,
now, and if that, look, that, you're right, that's an assumption today.
then
Well,
we'll
and it's similar
freeze
to
bonds,
Director
but
Pickham's point about, if we had asked for this money originally, where would we be today? Then what levy's gonna cost, so that we don't then have to go out for another bond and have these same discussions
I'm
around
with
that.
you. I think
Bill
that,
tried to be pretty conservative on that, didn't you, on that 17?
Tried to be, yes.
I mean, you didn't go in and nitpick to make real,
no,
No, I took the
Said make
wall
a
wall
flood
design
all the way
for
across.
Costello, and I assumed 13,000 feet
of flood wall.
along the, flood wall.
So that's a,
But Michael, you didn't get your question answered.
well,
And-
I'm sorry, Chris, let me circle back to that. Let's say the bonds are out 10 or 15 years and we can't do an early call. We'll have money in the bank, we'll lose a little bit on the interest, but each year we could take a percentage of what we have
Well,
in the bank.
let me just jump in there. What we're assuming, Trey, is a 2-year call.
All right, well, never
Well,
Is it 2 to, is it 2? Are we-
2 to 5.
2 to 5.
2 to
Yeah.
5.
And so that'll be analyzed with the new money bonds moving forward, but it would be in an adequate time period that's comparable to bonds you have callable now.
Is there a
So that
penalty for that early
There
call?
could be, and that would be a further analyzation, but if we're not selling these bonds still, that's a moving target, but potentially there is. In the market right now, we know we can get away with a 25-year call, and that's.
You mean a
fine.
5-year?
5-year call, so
5-year call.
2025 would be the call date, which matches up.
Without a
So
penalty.
to your point, Michael, worst case is that the minute you sell the bonds, 5 years from then, you can pay them all off.
Yeah, and/or, I mean, it's, either way, it's,
I mean,
it's there. I mean, having more money, obviously, we don't want to go out and borrow more, so, because we know we pay those fees much, just means that we can basically put that money in, right, like that we're doing.
And again, taking it to like an element penalty, but that helps the lender to alleviate some of that risk. So the lower the rate is, then there's going to be a prepayment penalty to bring that risk down. If the sooner that we're having something callable, then the higher the risk goes, because they've got to offset that. And so it always is going to try to find that level point. So it's which one do we want? Do we want to borrow the money at the least amount possible, or do we want to have the opportunity to pay it at the earliest date? So there's it's a balancing act.
but to be clear, you're just talking a balancing act between year 2 and year 5.
Yes, absolutely.
So how much are you using and when are you using it?
Exactly.
And when do you pull the trigger? Yeah.
Yep.
Question.
So, and we just have to make assumptions, because we don't know what's going to happen, so we take our best guesses at where those numbers will be and where we'll be.
Okay, so I think based on what you said, you just want to kind of defer on this, give us time to,
Yeah, no, I think
Soak it in.
it's a multi-step process. I don't think we're doing any damage by waiting until the next session.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Bill's
not ready
still
to
gonna-
tell you which one of these I like the best,
Bill's
but
still
they're
working.
good scenarios. It's great information.
yes, and don't get me wrong, I
we're still
just,
working on the
Yeah.
bond application.
it's all in
Yeah,
one spot was what I was
We
asking.
actually have an
One
approval
spot
to bond
versus
up.
two
Yeah,
different
and-
documents and three
And I want to
different
make sure you get what you want. I'm just not sure that, I'll speak for myself, that I know exactly how to put the analysis together that you have
Well,
envisioned in
well,
your
now
mind.
that I know where the numbers are, again, that was part of the ask, was all in one document. Right now, we've got bills, we've got this, we've got, so we can see it consolidated, right? Like you normally give to an executive, I have all and not have you go chasing documents to look at. But that was kind of what we were doing, so we could clearly see, okay, I see 17 million, I see that how.
Okay.
So let's,
But it is more of an executive
let's wind
summary
this up.
than it is.
That's
for
right.
detail,
Well,
right? It's
Yeah,
just a
exactly,
summary.
that's
I want
correct,
to make
that's
sure,
all I
because we
was,
struggled to
right.
figure out that this was the
The
right
executive
format.
summary.
We missed the translation,
So-
at least.
I think we're, anything else, or let's,
Good. I want to hear what Bill has to say.
let's,
Bond application, and I'm gonna put in both projects, the detention project and the pump station project, at the total estimated cost that I came up with. And I'm gonna put all engineering, less anything that got, just all engineering, okay? Drive out, and that's how I'm gonna send. I'm not gonna be reallocating monies from the last bond application. We'll worry about that after we bid the project, and that's the erosion project. Is that right? So we're not gonna do a change of scope?
No.
Okay.
I
Then I
mean,
know.
well, I'm making sure I'm translating the board right, but remember, the application you're seeking, the approval you're seeking from the TCEQ is a max number.
Right. You don't need to fund it.
So,
we don't need to sell them all.
and under this plan, to be very clear, you wouldn't come anywhere close to that number.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and give us your presentation, and if we have any questions, we'll.
Hang on. Okay, a discussion about a possible refunding. And
Gave to y'all. Behind the giant sheets of paper are more, as we've been going through all this analysis, we've always been focused on the ability to defease outstanding bonds as they become callable. So not only do we have that option of using operating cash on hand to pay those guys off early as we get to that appropriate time period close to the call date, we also, as y'all have done in the past, I think in 2016, given interest rates in the open market environment, like we sell your new money bonds, we can also do a refinancing through a transaction, a negotiated transaction, and even a competitive transaction. We can get into that discussion later. But based on the current interest rate market environment, and it's the same concept that Cindy was alluding to earlier, it's refinancing your house. You had a house or you sold bonds at some point in time at 4%, and now the interest rate, much lower interest rate, that you're achieving debt service savings in y'all's case. So if everyone has that packet in front of them, it's quite a few pages. Anyone interrupts me, I'm gonna kind of, and this is obviously interrelated to that macro discussion, Chris, that we just got through, and Chris stated it perfectly. But it also has to be looked at in a micro view, because on its own, it is a standalone thing. This refunding opportunity / analysis is something we do for all of our clients if an opportunity arises given market conditions. So even though we do have a lot going on that these particular bond series play into, you also need to take the perspective that they are on a standalone achieving savings through a refinancing transaction. And from our fiduciary perspective, we want to just make you obviously aware of that. So the first page on that packet is that the line graph, bond buyer 20 bond geo index. That's kind of like our S&P 500 in the bond industry. This just lets us know, Jerry, it's that first page right there, yeah. And this is kind of just our gauge to let us know where the market is. You can see this goes over the past 10 years. We update, it comes out weekly. It's every Thursday afternoon, and unfortunately, this is as of last week, and I don't know the rate. It may not even have been released yet, but it's been pretty consistent for the past 3 weeks, I think, at that 2.14. But it's just kind of our gauge to let us know where the market in geo muni bonds. I think the grouping of them they look at as an A-rated credit. Where it's trending, and obviously it's been trending down for a while. We have blips every now and then, but compared to a 10-year history, obviously still in historically low interest rates, and I know y'all have heard us say that a million times before, but we're still there, thankfully, and that's just where we are. The second page, and we bring the second page to you, and this will be entitled Debt Profile up at the top with y'all's name right before it. Anytime we do your tax rate analysis presentation at this time of year, this is a page right before we even get into that we do that just simply updates where y'all stand on all your currently outstanding bonds. So a lot of this information actually was included in the cash flows that we just went through, but this is just a detailed information page on the series of bonds you have outstanding now, the 14s, 15s, 16s, 18s, and 20s, their interest rates, what's outstanding after the 9/1 principal payment that Christina just said that they've made in her bookkeeper report, And then really what we use this at is our gauge to see if there are any refinancing or cash defeasance opportunities. We have obviously been in a position for a while that we've been watching this in terms of just thinking that the 14s and 15s especially, since they're the earliest callable, that 3/122, were our prime factors in the macro analysis that we just walked through. Now, because they're those prime factors for cash on hand, whether it's FEMA fund, operating fund, whatever it is, because of the current interest rate environment in just the open market, they're also refinancing candidates. So that's kind of why we're going through this extra step of information for y'all tonight to let you know that there is a transaction from a refinancing standpoint compared to the cash defeasance that could be had should y'all be interested. Also important to note, as we just discussed, there are still existing bonds that will have call dates that are going to be callable as we move through this process. And then any new money bonds that we potentially sell as we continue this discussion and decision making, we would be analyzing the shortest call date applicable when selling those new money bonds. So please understand the call date is a really big driver in the cash defeasance, or it's the biggest driver, either way you go. So just know that that's still considered.
But it's an either or, right? Obviously.
And I'm gonna go through this first, and yeah, it's gonna all, unfortunately, it's gonna all wrap around, but yeah, we're gonna get there for sure. Yes, sir, it is. But we have opportunities still, so it's kind of an either or, but maybe not really kind of thing.
Less of this.
Potentially, but there's still lots of variables, you know, always moving around. So if we're on the third page, and this is essentially just a summary page of then all the following numbers behind it. So that page 3 that y'all are looking at, this is the summary of all the savings, and then the actual detailed number runs follow it. And we can go through everything, we can answer any questions, whatever y'all want to do. But I think this summary page, we're going to try to hit the highlights, and the footnotes I think really help in terms of understanding. But once again, anytime we're talking about on a open market negotiated, and that's traditionally how these transactions are done, in a negotiated setting with you selecting an underwriter and then negotiating in the market, that any savings we talk about, and the main bulk of this, we're doing a refinancing to get the savings, are net of any expenses of actually doing the deal. So it's any number I tell you is a savings number, it's after taking out any soft costs involved with getting the bonds sold, okay? Compared to where if you're doing a cash defeasance, you're not selling a new series of bonds, you're just taking that money from either your bank or whatever source, and you're just paying it up front. So that's the main difference. So you'll see here, and like I said, we'll go through the detailed pages, but once again, this is focused on the series 14 and 15 bonds, which are callable 3/122. So our biggest limitation in terms of, like I said, is the call date. In terms of refinancing or 22 date, which means the numbers that we're from federal tax law perspective, we're just going to ask, we could do it 1 year, 2 years, and it'd be the time period for doing a financing. With that being said, and you can see there's going to be some footnotes. So that closing date B, that kind of just gets into the actual federal law details about what I actually just described, and it's a federal tax law that dictates when we can close to actually do this transaction. The numbers, as we get through them, these are based on a current market scale, actually, and Samco is a really helpful partner in the industry, and just based on y'all's credit and everything going on, that they're the easiest to get some numbers from quickly and are just overall very helpful. They actually bought your 2020 series of bonds when y'all did that competitively, just as a side note. But this just states that based on the market scale, it would be selling $19 million and $10,000 in bonds. And that is, the new structure would be having 3/1 principal payments, maturities 22 through 2038. Normally, with strict rules and how we structure them, the biggest savings you can get, the biggest one in uniform savings in between each impact to your overall amortization structure if we do that free money. Now, y'all are under City of Sugar Land, Fbclid, y'all don't really have any rules, other than the numbers structured here before. I've structured them just to be as clean as possible, just for discussion purposes, since this is the first time we're bringing this situation up. Service savings, that's just what you were paying compared to what the new bonds would be paying. Subtracting them out, those are the savings in total. It's about $107,000 a year out to 2038. Right below that, you'll see the net present value savings, and you can see that 8.16%. So well above that regular minimum threshold that most entities, when they're looking to either be required or just gauge if a refinancing is a good fit, you're well above that 3%. Once again, market fluctuates every single day, but these are as of scale 2 days ago. So pretty confident. And then at the very base of the 2014 and 15 bonds that are callable reasons that we went through. But also noting that we have other callable bonds coming due in a period that we would actually have the money to call them, the 2018s. Because in Phil's analysis, most of the FEMA money isn't even going to be available until 2024. And that's when those 2018s come callable as well. So, once again, lots of layers, of course. And as I said, traditionally, we do these type of transactions on a negotiated basis where we aid y'all in selecting an underwriter or recommend that we then go into the market, and with the help of our desk and their desk, they market the bonds, but we are monitoring all the pricing and that jazz. Also, because of the call date still being a few months out, there is an escrow. Those monies have to sit somewhere until we hit that 3/1/22 date. We would, because the easy peasy state and local government security window has since been closed a month ago, we do have to go through kind of a separate bidding transaction to get open market securities that essentially fund that escrow versus that being said. It's an overly complicated transaction to just, so if y'all then want to flip that summary page over, we can get into the actual lays out just that we are taking into account the 14 and 15s, when they're callable, which maturities, the interest rates that those individual maturities are, y'all are currently paying interest on, and then we'll be paying principal on if they were existing. Landscaping, the top of it says bond pricing. So this essentially details out, based on the current market scale we received earlier this week, once again, applicable for your A+ underlying credit rating, a non-bank qualified transaction, assuming a call date, an early call date, 3/1/2025. This shows you the refunding bonds. So these would essentially be the bonds that we would be selling now, and the majority of their proceeds to go into that escrow to take out the old bonds. So they would be your new outstanding structure. So you can see there, especially, you can see the amortization year by year, and then the very interesting ones are the rate and yields, especially the yield column. You can see just the interest, those just percentages, those rates ranging from 0.22% only upwards to 2.36%, and then obviously the couponing, which is what dictates your actual debt service payments, you know, based on the structure with the call date, 3% to 2% in general. So that's where that debt service savings comes from in comparison to what the 14s and 15s have as their coupons. Once again, markets change every day. Couldn't say this looks exactly the same tomorrow, but it's a general indication. We don't have any sensitivity that the market has moved too much since we were in these numbers. The next page, so it says page 3 at the bottom, but the top says sources and uses. This gives y'all a detailed breakout of if we sold these new refunding bonds, that 19 million in bonds, how those, once they're sold, what those proceeds do. So just starting at the top in sources, you'll see bond proceeds par amount, that 19,010,000. That's what it all rounds up to be. We're going to sell 19,010,000 based on the market scale. Just 283,000 in premium baked in there. That's a marketing perspective. That could be more premium, less premium. It could go into a discount structure. It all kind of has to do with what's going on every day. But for these purposes, there's 283,000 baked in there, and that leads you to your total summation of sources to 19. And the largest component would be that refunding escrow deposit. So you can see slugs purchases. you know, the OM, I just stated that the slugs window is closed, but essentially, there's no interest earnings on any securities that we will be from the government being done. So you'll see that a bulk of those proceeds would go 18.8 million to actually sit into escrow, and that's taking care of the principal and interest requirements of the 14 and 15 bonds exactly up until that 3/1/22 date. So the minute we close these bonds, we are buying enough securities to perfectly generate the P&I payments to the penny, what we need until they're actually callable. And to further verify that, besides our software and our number runs and verification, we do have public finance partners do a separate verification report on all of that. And then below that, I'm sure y'all are interested in this, the delivery date expenses, it's labeled, but essentially cost of issuance, about $53,000. We'll get into the detail of that. It's essentially the ancillary soft costs, like the rating fee, printing, painting, and that. Underwriters in transactions, it kind of gives or takes within that range, so we've assumed $750. This is just kind of their cost of doing business to get this done. These are detailed there, that amount of bonds sold. So it's constantly moving just based on how many bonds we actually end up selling. And then bond insurance. So y'all have an A+ underlying rating from S&P. And historically, y'all have always qualified for insurance in your last few deals. Those purchasers have chosen to spend their money and get y'all, be able to essentially pay a premium to market the bonds at a AA credit rating. So there's a premium out there, we get qualified by the insurance company. We would assume that that would be the same case. And essentially being able to market the bonds at a AA credit rating compared to y'all's great A+ underlying rating, there's just, you know, an advantageous market rate perception of that. So that's why we baked that in there into the transactions. And then that bottom line additional proceeds, it's simply a rounding amount to make it nice and clean. We do bonds in $5,000 denominations, so that's just a little cleanup.
So I was out for a second. What about the legal fees and your fees? Are those in here?
Yeah, they're labeled, and they, like I said, they change based on the par amount, so those were calculated as accurately as I could based on the fee structure for refundings per each contract. The next page, at the top of it, this is just lots of interest rates and calculations, but really at the bottom of it, you'll see this is letting us know we're selling 19 million to take out the 18.5. Obviously, it's higher because of the soft costs having to get added in there. But essentially, there's that 8.16% net PV savings, which if you recall, that's well above the standard in terms of what kind of the gauges are in terms of entities moving forward with a refinancing. The next page, page 5 at the bottom, savings. This is going to detail out really the comparison from what you are currently paying on those maturities of the 14 and 15 bonds compared to what the potential new refunding bonds, and we've done on an annual basis, and it puts to that 1.8 million that we showed in the summary, and on average it's about $107,000 a year for that time period. We then have a present value column to PV that back, and that's done at the AIC perspective, whether we're going by City of Houston rules or not. The AIC, the net PV, and issuance outside of the main consultant fees, so this takes into account your rating fee, your disclosure look back, printing of the documents, anything having to do with the paying agent, notice of redemption on both series of bonds, and the fact that we are going to have to set up an escrow, and then a verification agent. Various consultants, when we do these as negotiated transactions or competitive transactions, we are creating a preliminary official statement and or a notice of sale, depending on the method of sale. And so all of your consultants, bookkeeper, tax assessor, they'll, obviously your legal team and an underwriter's council provide input on those documents since they are our prospectus for marketing. We then have just a little bit of miscellaneous and of course an attorney general fee so we can get this reviewed one more time and approved by the state of Texas. So, lots of things to go through. We just wanted to let you know that obviously on top of the ability to cash these bonds, but knowing that you have to wait, the market, there is an opportunity. So where we stand now, essentially, if we were continuing to look at this as a standalone discussion, as a refinancing opportunity. It would be, do y'all have interest? And at next month's regular meeting, so your October, beginning of the month meeting, we would essentially decide if we needed to prepare sale documents to bring forward to you, have it, obviously, because this folds into the macro analysis of everything else, we need to think about it more. That's totally understandable because it is a lot to swallow. We all understand that. That we could maybe revisit at the mid-month meeting, look at a new set of numbers, but understand that with a refinancing in an open market transaction, that it is extremely market sensitive and it essentially takes a lot of work to prep. So it's kind of at some point, a decision does have to get made in terms of, do we want to explore it more and have the team work towards that, or do we want to not? You have an opportunity, and so that's what we just wanted to describe and bring forth.
So I've got several questions.
Sure.
Obviously, we refinance.
You're changing the defeasance cost when you do that.
Right.
That's the other thing you have to think about.
We did the
$8,000 a year, and it costs us almost $500,000, so it takes 4 3/4.
That's what I'm,
Okay, so
Once again,
Cindy or Jim?
And the more information we have, the better decision that we can make moving forward. And so, thank you.
yeah, this one made it easy to, and we know it's not the right, at this time, with everything else going on, not the right way, but I appreciate it.
Okay, appreciate that presentation. We are to item 3I on the agenda, your financial advisor.
I don't think there's a separate agenda item.
So
You
it's-
will, right? Yeah.
And I've been in touch with Jeff Wiley, we'll become members, we're gonna get an invoice from them for.
Okay. Yeah, for the Economic Development Council, Fort Bend County, for the Fort Bend County Economic Development
Yeah.
Council.
Okay, item 3K is your stormwater permit agenda item, and don't have anything there for you today. Item 4 on your agenda, operations and maintenance reports, and we'll hear from Jeff Perry. Jeff?
Evening, everyone. As Michael brings up my report, he already did. I have some hard copies if the board prefers that, but I will start on the levy as always, particularly the fence lines of trash and debris, no issues to bring up there. Good news on the tube steel repairs, try number 3 at this on contractors, but they are underway. They went out and they marked all the lines. You will see them get started tomorrow and probably finish up Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. So that project will hopefully be done and completed. Levee mowing is back on schedule after the wet weather that we have had on your levee. One issue that we did have, and I do have a picture of it on the very next page, is we did have some army worms that attacked your levee pretty well. You had a lot of brown spots on your levee. If you guys have seen it lately, that's probably what that was from. We treated it very quickly. It is actually, what's really funny in the picture that you guys are looking at is all the circles got moved to the left a little bit, but in my picture, they're straight on. But you can see the worms in the picture.
Yeah.
That is one right there on that corner, and all the ones are just, I don't know why the circles got moved on the PDF, but anyway, there they are. We already went and treated your entire levee. They are gone, everything is starting to green up again. We kind of jumped in front of it very quick, thank you, Michael. So that is now taken care of, but it's pretty typical after the amount of rain that we've had, this happens, and they hit a lot of levees in Fort Bend County, but we jumped in front of yours here pretty quick. Moving on down to the pump station, did clear your flat gates of trash and debris several times over the last month. And once again, with the storm that luckily did not hit us. Sad for all the people in Louisiana, but kind of glad that we did not get one headed our way. Quarterly generator maintenance is complete, no issues there. I do have a mismark on my report. We did find 3 leaks on the fuel line, but that is for one of your supplemental pumps. That was not on your generator at the pump station. All those lines have been repaired. We have tested that supplemental pump and everything is working like it should. So I'll make that correction on my report. We have completed your preventative maintenance on your automatic transfer switch for this quarter. No issues there. Everything's working like it should, which is good news. And moving on down to your ditches and channels. The only thing I have for you guys is a lot of trash and debris from the recent rains that we had. We got all that picked up. We've completed 3 additional areas along Ellis Creek that were holding water. We have about 4 left, So we'll get all those wrapped up, hopefully by the next meeting, and that'll close out that project. Levels on the last page of my report that you guys can look at. River rates are still below action stage, which is good news. Like I said, we prepared for the storm that was sort of headed this way, and then it took a turn to Louisiana, so we lucked out on that one. The only other thing I have for you guys that came up in between dropping off my report and today is we did get an email regarding the out-track. There is the home along Safarsha and Pecan Grove that that needed to be mowed. That was an oversight or just a little miscommunication on mowing. That has not been mowed in quite some time. I got with your contractor who's mowing all of the homes where the pump station's gonna go. I told them that needs to get on a schedule. They promised me that it would be done on Friday. They lied, it was done today. So everything has been mowed and mowed down. It's now on the schedule. It'll be on the same schedule as Ellis Creek and the levee. So sorry for the oversight on that, but it's on schedule now, and you guys will see that on bills going forward. So that was taken care of, Jim, if anybody else emails you on that one.
Thanks.
Other than that, guys, that's all I have. Just a bunch of updates today. No action items needed. Unless you have questions, that's it for me.
Okay, any questions for Jeff? Under item 4B, reclaimed water system, Rick Marriott's not able to attend your meeting tonight, but he did, I believe, send a...
He did send a note, and he said
Note
that
and
this is
a
the first
report.
time there weren't any repairs. So maybe after 3 years, we finished
system's
repairing
Settled in.
the recycled water system.
So you all have that report.
Yeah.
Okay, we are now to agenda item number 5, your capital improvement projects, and we'll start with Phil's report.
Howdy, I don't have another report at this meeting, but I do think I probably ought to introduce Shriram, everyone. Hey, it's nice to see you all in person again. Shriram, I don't know if y'all met him in person yet, but,
It's our AECom guy.
yeah. So, and really, all eyes are on him this week. I think tomorrow we're due to get our 60, right, tomorrow's 65? Yeah, he's got them for me right there, so 65% plans. Do you have the cost estimate for that too? Still working on it? Okay. But yeah, that's our big milestone we hit right now. We got 65% plans to comment on. They're still moving forward with design. And the one thing I didn't put in this report, Matt, they came in late yesterday and I haven't even had a chance to look at it yet. Do you have easement docs lined up for Centerpoint? You ready to pull the trigger on today? We're gonna save those for the...
No, the forms and the terms have been approved by the board.
Oh, okay.
At this point, I forwarded them to you to forward to the contact at Centerpoint and tell them it's a package deal.
Gotcha.
Because they had agreed to the terms in the access easement over on the west side of the district, the access road going down to the wastewater.
Oh, that's right. We agreed to that and then we framed the other two.
Which was Mud 112 and now the city of Sugar Land.
So we'll be executing external channel access, we'll be executing access off of 99 to the Centerpoint right away, and then there's a line over Ellis Creek we've talked about before too, so 3 different easements.
Right, when those are executed by Centerpoint, we'll bring them back to the board.
Okay.
If they're executed as is, if they have any substantive comments, we'll bring those to the board.
So real quick on that note, also Lid 10, which is your neighbor to the south, they have some agreements that they're working with Centerpoint on as well for the access on the other side of the river for what they're doing. That's all supposed to be signed at their next board meeting at the end of the month. So they're willing to go on in Lid 10 as well to help out with that project.
Yeah, I meant to call Rodney. Dang, I forgot about that.
Okay, great. But yeah, that's the next on my browser. We got plans to look at, and I think if you can send me an electronic link, Shriram, I'll post them to the SharePoint project folder too.
So we've got a lot of tasks that are coming due, the 65%, that's Friday?
Yeah, that's all. Some of it's here and some's coming next week, but yeah, we're in milestone time right now, so. And I'm curious to see what the cost, we think the cost estimate was, I'm hoping it's still in the same ballpark. Last time we talked it was. Some things have gone up, but we've also deleted some things, so hopefully it's a wash. We'll see next week.
Likely lower.
Yeah, which is good news.
Well, it's good. I'm glad you're here. We're really excited about the project. It's been a long time coming. The fact that we could go out to bid in March is pretty exciting and get started sometime in early summer.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still lined up for, and that schedule, Jim, and those costs are still baked into these cash flows, baked into what they showed you earlier today, so yeah, it's all still lining up, so.
Yeah, I know that coordination was a lot. Don't want to underestimate that.
We're getting there, so, other than that, do you have any big updates for today? I know this is kind of the regular business meeting, but that's the top line stuff. Unless you have any questions, or you need any extra info from us?
Questions for Phil? Or Sharon?
Thanks for showing up. We will in the future, just we're going to digest some numbers and that are going to help us figure out how we want to handle all
Well, I
this.
figured next meeting too, we can grill them about numbers and design and stuff too, and that's really what I'm shining.
Have plans in front of you, so.
Yeah, I think, but the point with yours is there's nothing holding you back, right? We've got discussions with the other projects. We want this project to move forward expeditiously. And so we're, yeah.
And there haven't been any weird things that brought up where it's like, you know, the landmines or, oh, we never thought of this, you know, no surprises have come up yet, you know, I would never know that, but nothing to bring you yet, Jim. We're on track.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Item 5B is your external channel. We are recommending that you go into closed session in part to talk about that project. 5C is Bill Abo's report. Bill.
Thank you. It's good to see you all. My goal was to have your pump station plans completed and submitted for review by the agencies, and we did make that happen. We did initiate that process on August the 31st. The city of Sugar Land requires 3 submittals. We were able to get 1 of the 3 in. For whatever reason, they wouldn't accept our documentation. We have an account with the county, but we weren't able to exercise that account. They wanted a credit card, so we did walk the plans through the next day. But also, we were required to provide a application signed by your board chairman, and I had to get his signature. So we're going to ratify that action today. But everything did get submitted at the very latest, September the 1st. Both the county and the city have received the plans, and we are hopeful to get some comments from them in the next 3 to 4 weeks. One thing, Jeff, I do intend to set up a meeting with you and your staff. I'd like to get a couple of your guys in and start looking at the drawings a little bit to get some feedback from you. A lot of the things that we did on the design is what we all talked about months ago, but it's always good to keep the communication open. We also continue to work with Enchanted Rock. As we agreed with Enchanted Rock, we're going to obviously share in drawings to make sure that both sets of plans complement the other. We will be submitting an electrical set of drawings to them in 2 weeks. I know one thing that was a very important topic for the board when I was fortunate enough to interview with you a few years ago was to not surprise you with changes in my schedule. So I'm going to notify you that COVID has been impacting our ability to work on your projects, specifically the pump station. We did make our schedule, but I am putting a little bit of fluff in my completion date, and I've updated the schedule accordingly because we've had several people that have gotten COVID, or they've had family members that got COVID, and they had to stay home, and it has affected our productivity. I am hopeful to get the plans done sooner than later, and that will always be my commitment to the end, but I did adjust the schedule. What that means is that we would start advertising the project instead of early November, that would be early December. And I think I also adjusted it that we would receive our bids after the new year. We don't like to try to bid, the week prior to Christmas because we don't always get a good turnout. Item 4, and this is kind of related also to item 9. We had submitted a consent to encroach with Centerpoint because we have that 14-foot UE that's along the back of the 3 lots, and we're going to have driveways and other facilities that go across that. For whatever reason, CenterPoint is happy with everything we've submitted, but in working with other departments at CenterPoint, they want us to enter into an agreement to relocate the pad-mounted transformers that are out there, which serve the 3 lots that we have acquired and adjacent lots on either side. So there will be some underground facilities that will have to be relocated or modified, and those pads will be relocated outside of where they're currently now. There is cost associated with that. There will be an agreement, which I understand they're in the process of drafting. Once we get it, we'll forward it to your attorney for review. I'm not sure we'll be able to change a whole lot, but obviously we just need to get your attorney review of that. There will be costs. I don't know what that is yet, but I will present that to you as soon as I learn it. As I understand it, once that agreement has been entered into, they will proceed through the process of the consent to encroach. At this point, they're not really impacting me, but I will say I was hopeful to have this a little further along at this point. We did ultimately get your plat finalized. I did get your board chairman and secretary to sign the plat. It's been submitted to the city, and it's our understanding we will be getting back the recorded plat within about 2 weeks. On the asbestos-containing materials inspection, we did complete that on the last 2 homes, and there was nothing of significance that was discovered. One thing we talked about at our last meeting was to move forward with the demo of the 3 homes. The board's decision was to delay that and to try to have that be done just prior to moving forward with the bigger project so that we didn't leave the site in disarray. I have proceeded with getting the contract together so that when you're ready to do that, we'll be able to pull the trigger and get the bids going as quick as possible. Already talked about that. And then item 10, I did prepare task order 15, and that is to prepare your 15th bond application. I did sharpen my pencil. I know it's been a concern of having to pay for extraneous costs associated with the bond application. Our minimum fee in your contract with us is $40,000. I'm proposing to do it for $35,000 plus reimbursables. A total fee of $36,000, estimated reimbursable expenses of $1,000. I have been in contact with Enchanted Rock, and they are, I guess, struggling to get their estimates updated, but they believe that they'll have it to us today or tomorrow. I honestly have not reviewed all my emails. I've been out in the field most of the day. I'm not sure, Chris, if you've seen anything from Greg, but I had not. Again, our agreement with them is to try to have an agreement by September the 21st. That's your next board meeting, as I remember. So the action items, 2 of them, is to authorize the district's chairman, this is a ratification really, to execute the City of Sugar Land review application for your stormwater pump station, and to approve our task order 15 for the preparation of bond application 15. Item D, detention pond and drainage facilities project. At our last meeting, I told you we had gotten comments back from the agencies, from both the city and the county. We have addressed some of the comments, but we haven't really prioritized getting those comments addressed in completion, since there is a possibility there could be changes to the plans depending on our acquisition status. But once we get a little bit further along in the acquisition and we've been able to review the site, on-site inspections, at that point we would move forward with finalizing the plans. The boundary surveys, we are moving forward to get the last boundary surveys completed. That would include the Bishop, Williams, and Faust, and also Kelly tracks. We have been able to get out and do some of the work in the past. We have it scheduled to complete the rest of that work early next week, and then we would be ready to finalize those boundary surveys. Under item 5, I think in our board meeting maybe a month ago, when you all decided how you wanted to move forward with the environmental assessments, I had voiced my concern on being able to get into the properties without having a right of entry. And as you know, there are a few landowners that are not really agreeable to what's going on right now. I've been in discussions with your attorney, and we, as the district, have certain rights under the Texas Water Code, Section 49.221, which gives us the right to do these subsurface evaluations. But that doesn't remove my concern of my folks being on site, potentially putting them in harm's way. So what we're going to do to exercise our rights under this Texas Water Code is to formally notify the landowners of our intent to get within their property to do this work. We'll notify them a minimum of 72 hours in advance, and we ask that the district authorize that we contract with either law enforcement or a private security company to accompany our folks while we do the work. We've done a lot of work like this in the past, even with very basic stuff like doing boundary surveys where you're not really disturbing the property much. The environmental assessments require that we put a backhoe out there. We're going to be digging on their property. But even with very mundane surveys, we've had people come out with guns. They've escorted us off their property. They've threatened. They've shot at us. We don't want any of that. So we want to do this safely, and we think this is the best course of action. So the two proposed action items was to authorize the district attorney to prepare the notice to the landowners and to allow a contracting service with, again, law enforcement or private security company.
Do you have one that you guys use? Because the city of Sugar Land, they're they do, there is a person that facilitates it. Because my conversations with the chief before annexation was those off-duty, again, would be off-duty, but they also allow them to use patrol cars, which then gives them the presence. So there is a coordination so that we can use City of Sugar Land off-duty.
Sure, and if you have a contact,
It's just the city manager.
Hey, Jorge.
It's not in the city limits.
But-
Can you join the conversation for a second?
but are they? I think they're still able to, because I've had we've had parties out in the ETJ of Houston, and I've had City of Houston police officers attend those events.
Because, or the other alternative would be with the HOA, their agreement with the constables, because they currently do traffic control for the out-track right there for the mosque that's there.
Right.
So one of those two, but the assistant city manager, that was the former law
Yeah,
enforcement.
let's pull Jorge in. So,
Well, I would say two things. We need to make officially a request to the
Yes.
city, to the police chief. And second tricky part is, I understand this area is in the ETJs, it's not in the city.
Yeah, but these
So
would-
technically, the city won't be able.
But these are off-duty.
These would be off duty.
Yeah, all right. So in that case, just make the request to the city.
Yeah.
Bill, if you get to a standstill, we have one that we used for Harvey, that we use for other things too, to protect us. Call me and I'll be there.
All right,
Let me know.
thank you.
Yeah,
I know there's lots of opportunities out there, and any information you could share would be helpful. So the plan would be, I'm going to try to get this worked out between now and our next meeting so that you can take action on that. We are going to be working internally to figure out a reasonable time frame that it would take once we were told go to get out there and do this work. There's going to have to be some flexibility with weather and so forth, but I think we have enough information we could share with any security company. Under item E, the Reclaimed Water Project, I have updated the schedule, and I have been working with my guys. We're looking at submitting the final plans, essentially the 90% plan set by the end of September. I have updated the schedule in your report. On the status of the emergency action plan, we're working on it. We're trying to get a draft together for the existing system. Once we have that together, we're going to get your district manager. You're a manager to me, I'm sorry, but the district manager and your operator to come and visit with us. We're going to probably send it out to them so they can review it in advance. I'll also get your technical committee to look at it, and then we can all get together and talk about it. Okay? So that's my report, unless you have questions.
We have some, I think I did. I would kind of back up.
Okay.
Are you feeling overwhelmed here, Bill? There's a lot of stuff. I mean, you've got a lot of things going on. No problem.
I got a lot more than just this, believe me.
Can you back up, please, Michael, and see if I can remind myself I should have taken a note. No, not that one.
Probably related to my statement on the COVID on the pump station.
No, I don't think so. Go back. I don't know. If I think of it, I'll figure it out.
If I'm overloaded, I promise I'll tell you.
You sure?
I would. Sure, I would.
Yeah, let's go down to each of the task items then.
Action items.
Action items. Right there. Okay. Yeah, go up to, are there action items for, you're on D, go up to A. Start at the top and go down.
Now, you might be comparing me to your
C.
previous engineer, Jim, but, we've
we're
got
not,
you covered.
I'm not comparing you to our previous engineer.
It wasn't a complaint.
No, it wasn't. This wasn't an assessment on my part that you look like you're overloaded. It was more of, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I want to make sure that.
I've got 22 folks in my group, and I've got a number of departments that help me out with a number of these pump station projects, so we've got a good staff. I will say, as I made the statement earlier, COVID has hurt our company over the last year. We lost our president, and we've got a lot of people who've been sick over the year, but, I'm sure everybody else is feeling it too. It's been pretty tough.
All right, I remember my question. It's a little one-off. The $20 million estimate for the pump station.
Yes.
Enchanted Rock is a $3.5 million estimate. What do we have in there? Is this a $20 million project or a $23.5 million project?
No, we did not have their numbers, so we put in there what we believe the generators would cost if you went with a Caterpillar generator.
Which was $1.5 million or what?
No, it was more than that. I think all in it was like $4 million.
Oh, so it was
You
about
put
the
in
same.
natural gas generator.
Natural gas.
Yeah.
Now, understand that my original estimate was a diesel generator, and that added over $1 million in cost. So those were some of the things that changed in the design from what I gave you a year ago.
No, it's okay. Where I'm going with all this is if we're looking through all these numbers and we've got this $20 million estimate for the plant, that fully includes the.
It includes the generator, yes, sir.
Okay.
And I'm cautiously optimistic that when you get the new numbers from Enchanted Rock, it'll go down a little bit. I got my fingers crossed.
They're around 3.5 right now, or is the worst case?
They were low threes, if I remember, wasn't it?
3.3, yeah. And so if you took that number, yeah, we would lower our overall estimate, but we're expecting it to go up. So-
It's going to go up a little from that original number, yes.
All right, why don't we go through these action items then? You want to do this, Chris?
Yeah, we can do them all in one motion, which would be simply to approve the action items and the one ratification item listed in the OJ report.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, I think that takes us to item 6 on the agenda, the attorney's report. Just wanted to remind you all that when COVID started and you all were able to meet remotely, you adopted a resolution formally titled Resolution Adopting Temporary Policies and Procedures in Response to the COVID-19 Pandemic. It allowed you all to meet remotely and have one signature on the checks. Just to put a bookend on that resolution, it is no longer effective because the governor's emergency declaration expired at the end of the
There's no action by us.
No action, it just wanted to, we'll reflect that in the minutes, just to put a bookend on that resolution. And that's all I've got under the attorney's report. Item 7 is website and communication matters. Michael?
All right, so for website updates, we did get all the discussed and required HB 1154 updates. Director FinCom did follow up with us today. There was a couple things that we had missed, and we got those finished up. To clarify, Director FinCom, were you saying that the minutes had not been on the site until today, or that they'd not been in the folder until today?
No. So the minutes, not yours.
Okay.
The minutes they provide us to review.
Because I know it's been a problem in the past, I want to make sure that we were.
Yeah, no. This was, again, in this case, just so everybody, there was the addresses and then the tax document for 2020 that was, we did in September hadn't been posted yet. But that was that period of where we were documenting.
Because we have been working with SBH to get the minutes on the site faster, so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Of course, news posts for the meetings, website statistics, again, you're up, people are looking at documents page. But the one thing that we've kind of noticed is now a trend up on the tax information page. That's coming from people who are direct linking. That's people who have bookmarked it in the past and reviewing and preparing to pay their taxes in this tax season. And then, of course, we have resident inquiries to the tax assessor collector. We've kind of closed out and implemented the video streaming. We've tested it offline, but then we've also been testing it tonight as it's been active. It looks like it's working fairly well. We did get one resident that named Dee who reached out and said, hey, there's some buffering issues, and we've addressed that live during the meeting. So it appears to be working pretty well. We are going to need to anticipate a little bit more setup time in the beginning, but overall, I think we've done well with that. So we have no open items, no action items at this time, so I'll take any questions from the board.
So there's only one thing and again, the new iSwim application we need to get added to, which already showed you Sugar Land has launched, which is the ponding. We need to get that added to our website, the link to that, so that way, if you're not familiar with it, it's a basically predictive ponding, street ponding application that based on those gauges that we have within our community, they're working with our GIS team, they have basically based on the rain gauges, however much rain, they're predicting what the street level ponding would be. And so, again, that's, as we said, about sharing that information to ours. It just makes sense to kind of help advocate it on the city's behalf because they put together a great app. And I wanted to say, I've looked at it, it's really great.
iSwim?
One clarification only for you levy experts. The model is set up for when the levies are operating with the gates full run. Phase 4, which is the one that's coming,
Right.
if we get access to your models, will include what is the situation when the gates are closed and you're operating your pumps. Technically, it can run, the model can run for any sort of rain from 1 hour to 24-hour duration, any intensity. So whatever is the storm, basically that we are seeing on the rain gauges, we have 28 gauges in the city of Sugar Land, so we divided in, let's call it watersheds. They are not really watersheds.
Watershed,
it's called
yeah,
watersheds. And it calculates based on the amount of rain that is observing at a particular time. It forecasts what is the ponding of any street inside the city of Sugar Land. Now it's a forecast, it's fairly accurate, we have evaluated, we have tested, and at least within inches in many places. And it's assuming that the 2-year storm is all collected into the system, so anything in excess of the 2-year storm could be a storm of 1 hour or a storm of 6 hours or 12 hours, whatever it is. And it calculates the ponding based on the LiDAR elevation that we have for the particular area. So another thing is if you turn on the system and we get less than the 2-year storm, which roughly is 2.5 inches of rain in 1 hour, for 1 hour of rain storm, you're not going to see anything. You're just going to see the streets. It has to be collected at least 2.5 inches before you start seeing ponding, but it's fairly accurate.
Is it taking into account the river elevations in the?
No,
okay.
right now, the model works on the assumption that
Everything's dry.
Gravity.
All right.
The next phase, but we will need your cooperation at that time because we need to include your model with your pumps. And the only reason we could have done it at this phase, but basically the two most important levy districts within the city, which is 7 and 2, are installing new pump stations. So it will have completely defeat the purpose to do it and then having to do it again once you have your pump stations in place. So we are waiting for you to complete your pump stations, and then we can incorporate that into the model.
Rain intensity showing with gates open and river down too. So rain intensity, okay.
So I have a question for, I guess, both for Jorge and you, Director Pincombe. Do you foresee us just putting a link to the application on the rain gauges page, or do you foresee like an API output that we're gonna put on the website?
That's whatever capabilities they have for the API, but at the simplest is just like we do with the gauges in the Fort Wayne Warren, is to make it available, easy for our constituents to go to our site and get information. We might be linking and getting the data from the city sugar line.
And it's very easy, it's iSwim Sugarland, and you will get the access. And it has a webpage just dedicated to that, explain how it works,
It's
how it operates and everything.
ISWMN.
Another feature that is not ready yet, we are still in process of implementing that with Harris County Flood Control District, because you know they operate all the gauges for us, is, I guess probably in about a month, the residents could sign up for alerts, and it will send them an email or a text, and they can sign for any gauge or for all of them, and it will tell them, not most of the rain gauges or the stream gauges, the Harris County Flood Control District, they basically based on the level on the channels, tell that it's probably flooding, likely flooding, even in flooding, whatever it is. We are doing a conversion from that to actually rain gauges that is connected to our system, and it will do the conversion and actually will forecast how much ponding we are going to see on the streets based on the precipitation that rain gauge is reading. So it will be 6 inches, will be likely flooding, so that will be at the top of the curve. I don't remember all of them, but I think the next one is 1.5 feet. It's probably flooding, and more than 1 feet, we say likely flooding. So it would, everybody that connects will receive a text alert or an email saying, okay, your area, your gauge, you are going to be extreme ponding or likely ponding or whatever it is. So that's not set up yet. We are still in the discussion with flow control how to exactly set up the system, but eventually it will be available to anybody to be able to receive the alerts.
It's good information. If they send the alert in the text, it goes from the city, so they would be contacting the city if they had questions?
It will be directly from flood control.
That's
But
the one.
in our webpage, we'll explain, because if there are questions right now.
Right. I'm just thinking in the middle of an event, if they get that in Lid 7, and they start contacting our website to get information, are we
It
pushing
will
them
come
back to the city?
It will come to the city.
Okay, we gotta put that in the EAP, because that's gonna happen.
Well, I was just,
Don't mention anything.
No, I
about
understand, but
the
I'm
alert
just-
system
but,
yet,
yeah.
because it's not
I
ready
was
yet.
thinking about our gauges too, and
Well, and that will be a.
We might wanna
further
marry our
discussion of
information
why
with
can't we-
theirs.
But they're using from Warren and they're getting that data, so it's just it's a follow-on of.
But we may
could
want to outline that in the
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think it was a great system. I watched all your videos to kind of learn about it, and, again, it's just about informing our constituents, just like we made the gauges available, so that's why I'm bringing it
So
up for this.
we'll look into that deeper and bring something. To kind of tail off of what Jeff said, do you need communications to be part of the discussion on the EAP?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out, but
Oh,
yes.
That's all right, I'm okay. I
Yes.
just want to double check.
No, we
Because we've
definitively,
anticipated that, I want to make sure we're.
there's we have one that we've done for other districts, and I remember in the back part of it, we had communication, the hierarchy of communication.
Okay.
And let me give you a little bit more history of this. Actually, this program started back in 2008, and we started basically developing 2D models all over the city. Right after Harvey, when we basically had to go and do new grant studies all over the city, especially the area that funded the most. We actually decided to bring it from paper map that we actually, at that time, we had literally paper map that we had, and we bring it to the EOC. We started developing a web base, because not everybody would access to the paper maps and all that. But all this was for emergency response in the city. When we got the 28 gauges incorporated and all that, we decided, and also at that same time that we annexed Redwood and new territory, we decided to go into a more sophisticated model that basically incorporate all the rain gauges, everything in real time, create those maps, web-based, all for emergency management purposes. But then one of the city council members he said, yeah, we'll authorize that, but only if you give access to the public. So when that happened, the whole model, the whole program actually changed completely, because that was only for staff use, kind of control information. Now we have to really give access to the public, real-time information. So we were kind of an asteroid. So this has been in development for the last 12 years, literally. So what you are seeing is the product of many models and work and stuff that we have been doing. And Bill probably knows how complicated are those 2D models and to make them work. And there are models all over the city, so we have to integrate everything into a single system that we talk to each other and talk to the rain gauges and all that. And the complexity that the rain gauges are managed by flood control, so we have to communicate and coordinate with them too. So it's a very sophisticated piece of software.
Yeah, I look forward to looking at it. Thanks, Jorge.
The last question I have is a logistics question for the attorney. We should have talked about this before the meeting. When you go into executive session, are you leaving the room, or are we leaving the room, and how do you want us to shut this down?
Is there another room available?
There is. Can you just power it off?
Well,
We can
yeah, but
power-
then they
we can
gotta
power it
stick
off and
around.
Put it in a blank state, shut all the mics and everything down, that's not the problem. But it's really however you and the board want to handle that.
Well, easiest for us to just sit here, but that forces you to just sit outside and twiddle your thumbs.
I think isn't Lakeview open, Jorge? Lakeview, is that open?
Lakeview, it should be. All those rooms are open.
We can just pick up our stuff and walk. They can shut down the meeting, right? There's no need to keep it open through.
No, actually, don't we have to keep this running?
No,
Or we can
no,
shut
not
it
anymore, we're
down?
streaming.
No, that way you can,
We're not streaming
you
right
can
now.
close it up and go home.
There's no requirement. Yeah, we are.
But there's no legal requirement that we be streaming, so to stop it at any time is.
It's open, there's no seats or anything in there.
Yeah, I went through.
It's closed, I think there's somebody in there.
Oh, okay, so there is not an
Well,
alternative room.
there's a room, Lakeville view right here, but there are no chairs or tables.
So, sorry,
All right, I can't do that.
I don't think it'll be too, hopefully it won't be too.
It's not a problem.
Yeah.
We
All right.
can go to council members.
No, we're okay.
We're good.
Okay, any questions for Michael on his report? Jorge, thanks for that, I appreciate it. All right, we are recommending that you go in closed session, not asking any other consultants to join you tonight, just you all. And would ask that, or entertain